Omer,
Chris.
greetings.
Thank you.
Salam.
Salam.
Is that appropriate
Yes.
way to start off with?
Yeah.
Omer, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You are on deck. How does it feel?
It feels good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You look good. You look good in a jacket, and shirts. You're representing yourself very well today.
Thank you.
As always, but you look good, and I'm glad to have you here. I have given a lot of thought. First of all, let me, for everybody that's watching, Omer is one of our digital marketing managers and more of a SEM and paid social specialist. Would that be a correct description of you?
Yeah.
And you've been here with us at the agency, I want to say it's been 3 years?
4.
2017.
2017. February.
Oh, okay. Well, then here we are. Congratulations on 4 years. My apologies for cutting your tenure short accidentally by a year. I do apologize.
No worries.
I mean, no disrespect on that. Omer, you're a very interesting guy, and I think that we have the opportunity to cover a lot of conversational territory today. And while it is always important for us to talk about, business and what got you into, what it is that you do here, I'd like to suggest that we get to that later. And I would like to pick up conversationally to some degree where we left off a couple of years ago in my office, not politics or anything, but really more, I'd like for you to share with me your heritage and Turkey and where you're from and what being from that part of the world means to you and what you bring into your life with that, because I know it's a very important part of who you are.
Yes. So I come from a very multicultural background. My mom is Ecuadorian. My dad is Turkish, but it doesn't end there. On my dad's side, my late grandfather is of a Turkic Russian descent.
Okay.
Having born in Russia, but still of the Turkic origin, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So
maybe not too far.
Right.
From my wife's Tatar background.
Yes, he's from Dagestan, which
Okay.
is right north of Azerbaijan.
Yes.
So it's a very multicultural background, as you can see in my family.
Sure.
Different traditions, different norms, and very beautiful.
Yes, I know we've spoken about it, and I remember at one point in time we were looking at points on the map of Dagestan, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And so with that unique combination of cultures in your life, what are some of the traditions that mean most to you?
The togetherness.
Yeah.
Having just half watched Brad's podcast, the fact that he mentioned as well the togetherness and how he had his family gatherings as well. I connected to that as well. I mean, we didn't have Sunday, gatherings.
The Italian Sunday dinner.
But,
right?
Every time, because of the distance, every time we would go as a family, whether it be Ecuador or Turkey, I would say heavily Turkey, but still, the family gatherings was very important. I had a very deep connection with my late grandma, my dad's mom.
Okay.
So whenever I was there, she taught me a lot, whether it was math or things that I need to know in school. And so it was very important, those gatherings. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more. You mentioned this bond with your grandmother. What was that like? Tell me.
It's kind of like having a second mom. Maybe the fact of, so I don't know if this is a thing in the Russian culture, but in the Turkish culture, usually the firstborn, the first grandson, is, I guess, very defended and very protected by the grandma.
Okay.
And so I remember it was my little brother and my cousin, because I had an aunt, so her child. Whenever either my little brother or my cousin would get in trouble when we're at grandma's, she would always scold at them. And so, and even, physically as well.
A little bit of old school discipline, right?
Old school discipline.
Right.
And so I would just get a scolding, but it wouldn't be to that extent. And aside from that, she was very interesting. Like, she had 5 cats. 5 dogs. You know, the dogs were in the backyard,
Mm-hmm.
in their dog house, in their dog shed. So the fact of just, I guess, being, that's where I dedicate my pet friendliness, my love for pets.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense.
I did not know that about you.
Yes.
I did not know you had a love for pets.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can touch on that a little bit. I'm curious. So, you're technically, you're the firstborn grandson, or you're the first son, right? So therefore, that gives you sort of an old school level of privilege, right? In your grandmother's eyes. How did she communicate to you? How did she teach you the things and the values that were important to her?
So it started when I was like around 7 or 8, and it would start out with like script, of course, Turkish script, and then Turkish letters, which by then I remember I was also going to Turkish school. So that's another topic as well. Having been raised in New York, the Turkish community in New York is very tight and close in terms of traditions and values, cultural values. And so there's the Turkish consulate, and still to this day still has the Turkish school where they would send their kids off, to practice the language and better it more, in terms of grammar and such. So that's why I brought that up, because whenever I would go back in the summers to my grandma, I would freshen up my Turkish language there.
Right.
And so aside from that, script and math. So she taught me a lot of math there, at a young age. My grandma, my dad always told me that, she didn't go to university or college or high school, just, elementary school, but she was smart, and she was good at math. She didn't need it. You know how like some people don't need school, but they're kind of like just born with it.
Yes.
So
it's interesting, and it ties into, in my opinion, the connection that you have and that many of us have with our families, and what it means to be a family, right? And one of the things that it means to be a family, in my opinion, is that each generation hopefully takes seriously and feels responsible for the advancement of the next generation, or the next generations, plural. And through these conversations that I've had with many of our teammates here, I get the sense that is, that's universal. And so what you're telling me is your grandmother, she was, she may not have had a long or lengthy formal education, but she was highly educated, and she understood, and she saw the value in making sure that was taught to you. So it was interesting, because when I asked you, like, what are the things that she taught you, I wasn't sure if you were going to say academic items, which is what it turned out to be, or life lesson types of lessons as well too. I just used the word lessons like 3 times in one sentence, but it's just interesting that there's this desire. And it's what I really love about the human species and families, is this continual effort to try and do the best that you can to make life better for the following generation, so that as a family you can continue to grow and progress.
Correct.
It's really interesting. What are some of the other things, when you would go home and visit, the gathering and the getting together with your family? Specifically, what are some of the things or experiences that mean the most to you?
So connecting the gathering experiences in Turkey, and as well as 5 years back when I was finally able to see long lost relatives from my granddad's side, on my dad's side in Russia, it has to be
it might be a little more comfortable if you put the there you go.
Okay.
That's going to stay a little bit better for you.
It has to be the gatherings on the table, just the communication and the talk. Like, our family in Turkey on my dad's side is a little small, because it's just my dad and my aunt, and other than that, like because of the fact that my granddad, my late granddad, and my grandma's parents as well were also migrants from Russia.
Okay.
And so the majority of the family were there. So the place where I really, really experienced true family gatherings was in Dagestan. When I went 5 years ago in 2016. It was the summer. It was my first time and last time. We're trying to go again once the borders are opened up. But it was in the summer, and them living in the village, close relatives, they would have, they would just gather in the backyard, have this type or even longer, like a really long table, and just home cooked food, and
right.
The guys would be sitting on this end right here. They would join, of course, but once the meal is ready, we would have talk, and just conversing.
So are the kind of like what we were talking about with Brad on his, it's sort of like, the men are over here maybe having their drinks and talking, and food's being prepared, and it's interesting that there's these sort of similar patterns in many cultures, right?
Correct.
And it's such a beautiful thing, and as I was mentioning earlier in the conversation with Brad, it's just one of the strongest ways to bond together as people is to sit down, share a meal, talk, communicate, maybe have some drinks if that's your thing, and really share the stories of your family and the stories of your history. It's just such a beautiful thing, and I know from having conversations with you that it's a meaningful part of your life as well too.
And I want to add to that, because I can guarantee you that if I ever would have been able to meet my granddad, he would have been able to definitely share his stories. But just the fact of me being there and having my family there take me and my parents and my brother to my granddad's house where he was raised, where he slept and stepped foot, that just being there was surreal. It was beautiful.
Seeing where he had lived, grown up, and slept, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting when the last trip that Irviana and I made to Russia during the summer, almost 2 years ago, we visited her mom's village, Amikevo. I may mispronounce that. Amikevo. And visited the house that her grandfather had lived in as well too, and where her mom grew up. And her, she knew her grandfather and was very close, and he had passed. But to go back there, the house was still there, untouched, over time. And, of course, everything had sort of grown up around it, so it has a different feel. But to be able to go back there and experience that with her is much like what I think you're sharing. It's like, you just go, wow, there's a history here of somebody that was very important in our family, and this is where they spent time, and to be able to experience that must have been great.
Yeah.
So you grew up in New York, in Queens, right?
Born in Manhattan, raised in Queens.
It's so many of us here, and I don't know if anybody realizes, so many of us here are like New Jersey and New York, right?
You're New Jersey.
New Jersey. Yeah. Brad's family is originally from New York at one point in time. Tom's from New Jersey. Rachel's from New York. Susie's from New York. Aaron's family. Aaron was born in Queens, I believe, as we talked earlier. So it's so cool. You can't plan it that way, but it's just interesting that the majority of us here all come from this, this part of life, this area of the country. So what was it like for you to grow up in New York?
Fast.
Yeah.
Fast, but exciting at the same time. I guess it was a stage in my life, more so like in the beginning where I was attending college, I want to say, because, elementary school to high school was in Queens, and Queens is not like, it's not like the city. Queens is it's outside the city. It's not quite a suburb, but still it's not as crowded as the city.
Right.
And so growing up in Queens Astoria, Queens was very, different in the sense of having a very multicultural community as well.
Right.
Just like myself with, having different cultural backgrounds. And so I want to say the real excitement came when I first started college in the city, because it was Hunter College. Okay. And just a few blocks from Central Park. And this is on Lexington Avenue. And so you got all these, high rises 2 blocks away from Central Park, which on my breaks I would go as well. It's like I'm like a little kid there, excited, adventuring, so it was nice.
That's great. So getting to see, let's see, Lexington is on the upper east or west side?
Upper east side. It was Lexington and 68th.
Okay. All right. So not too far up into Central Park.
Right.
Right. If I remember correctly, the
northern tip.
Yes. Where's the museum? The Museum of Art the Metropolitan? The big one.
Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Is just a little bit further north there.
Right.
And I love that area too. Every now and then I'll take a trip to New York just to get a weekend away and stay somewhere up around there and just wander around there and go run in the park. It's really, it's magical.
It is.
When you got into college, and I guess this would be the time when I would sort of lean in the direction of how did you ultimately end up in the field of digital marketing? Like what through college into now led you on this path?
It was actually not so much college, but after college. Like college, of course, played one component.
Right.
Because from there, I studied one semester in Baruch College. Because, well, I want to say not so much the influence, but my dad actually guided me towards business. Mm-hmm. My dad having a lot of experience in business as well as economics.
Okay.
So then he told me, son, major in economics in Hunter, and then maybe you can get into Baruch from there, which is actually one of the top public business schools in the country, public colleges. So I studied one semester. It was my junior year, and then one semester I studied just full-on business and marketing classes there, because marketing wasn't so much available in Hunter. There was no business department. So then from there, I knew that I wanted to just choose marketing. I didn't know what type of marketing, but marketing was going to be it. Being creative and seeing a lot of this creativity in it as well. And then actually that was the last semester because we moved. So we then moved to Turkey, and then I transferred to my college, my university in Istanbul. Okay. And there I continued, my studies with a degree in business administration, concentrated in marketing. Okay. And so, knowing that the future is in digital, and seeing how much creativity plays an important role in digital marketing, I chose digital marketing. Being a writer, not being a writer, but being very close with writing, having written so much compositions, essays. I love writing. I remember in high school, this was in Queens, in high school, it was towards my junior and senior year, being in, AP English, AP writing classes, AP American history, always writing, putting comprehensive thought on your paper, analysis. So.
All right. So I'm glad that we've gotten to this point in the conversation, because this is really where I want to pick your brain a little bit. And I find it interesting because what I wanted to see, and you said it, is you got into marketing and you chose the field because you liked the creativity, right? And I was going to ask you, and you sort of answered it, but I'll ask it again. At what point in your life did you start to realize that you had a desire to be a creative, to express yourself in some way, which you're saying sounds like writing?
Yes.
Right? When did that come about, and why?
That came about, so the real story that I want to tell you, yes, of my digital marketing career, the beginning of it in Turkey, was about 9 years ago, 2012. And so I was actually accepted to 2 positions. So I had to make 2 choices. And so one of them was to either be a business development specialist and entry level, or an online marketing specialist, which at that time was digital marketing. So it's actually one of the key ways to enter into the digital marketing field. So I looked at them both. I'm not really much of a numbers person or financial analysis, with business development or revenue growth. And so I saw I could really use my creativity more in digital marketing. So I went with online marketing specialist. It was a financial company dealing with foreign exchange. So the euro, the dollar, basically were advertising for that service, financial services. And it wasn't just an office in Istanbul. Their main headquarters office was in London. So that not only did I get introduced into online and digital marketing for the local market, but I just started my career there, creating and managing different countries' Google Ads campaigns and paid social. So and actually using Spanish to my advantage, because they had offices in Mexico, in Colombia. Back then we used Google Translate for like campaigns for like for German, for Germany, for Poland, for Italian. They had like a marketing manager for those offices. So basically our translations of the ad copy we would send off to those marketing managers to, edit.
But going back to the beginning of that segment, the creativity for you really was writing.
Yes.
And was there a time in your life earlier on that you just developed a skill for writing, or you started to really enjoy it? Did it happen in
high school?
High school.
Yeah.
And then it carried on.
Yes.
Did you ever want to be a writer, say a novelist, or
No. I actually started off, I want to say, drawing. And that was more in the earlier years, in like elementary and middle school.
Right.
And just, I guess, having this passion for arts. At one point I even had interest in cinema.
Really?
Yeah. I took a cinema class in both high school and history of cinema, college and high school. But when I saw that, basically what I would draw during elementary and middle school was more so like landscapes. Things that I guess an urban planner would draw, like buildings or landscapes, but I didn't really pursue it. So then, come high school, now I'm starting to write more essays, and I'm really putting my thought and my analysis into these essays. I say to myself, I like this, I'm putting all of my thought into this paper, into this essay, and just you're just like venting and just putting all of your key analytical points on the paper. Do you think
that there is a common thread with guys, men and women, who get into digital marketing, particularly on the SEO, SEM side, that there is some sort of foundational desire to write? It was true of Darren. Darren indicated he wanted to be a screenwriter. I didn't know that, and I didn't know that you had a joy and passion for writing as well too. Obviously now you look at it and you go, well, God, that makes perfect sense, because so much of what you're doing is short writing, right. Custom tailored to either the campaign or the audience, right? And so there is this creativity there in the digital marketing field, particularly with SEO, SEM, from a writing perspective, that I'm starting to see this consistency amongst you guys. And I think it's really cool, because as we as a company continue to grow and evolve, as I mentioned in our meeting, our get together a couple weeks ago, my desire is really to take our creative to the next level. And in order to do that, I think we'll be most successful by being able to tap into yourself and everybody else here, because there's not been one conversation that I've had here that didn't have some thread of why a person got into marketing or advertising. It was always a desire to be creative. It was always a desire to express. And we've got so much of that here that I think collectively can really improve the quality of our work.
I actually want to touch on that a little more.
Okay.
So it's not even just the creative. I want to say maybe creativity is 70% or 60.
Okay.
It's usually a 70-30 or 60-40. And the 30-40% is the analytical side of it. And that side I get from my dad. I grew up, watching my dad invest in stocks.
Okay.
And, himself, being active in the stock markets. I was like 4 or 5. So looking at these charts, I guess the numbers, the comparisons, the analysis, he kind of showed me until this day. Also, I'm not the best. I'm not like an expert, but, I know some points here and there. More so of the Turkish stock market, though.
Okay.
But, having, seeing that analytical side of my dad, and then, just continuing it and fostering it into myself, and then, having it just develop through time, and then taking that side, that skill actually, and then meshing it with creativity, you get digital marketing.
That's what a great way to explain it. What a great way to explain the two, complementary passions, if you will, right? This desire to be creative and express and write, and then also to be able to satisfy your desire
Yeah.
to, through the analytics, really determine patterns, determine results, and make projections on what to do in the future. You've got this combination of these two skill sets that are part of you from childhood that you get to put together in digital marketing.
It's like baking a cake or baking something.
Right?
Two key ingredients.
That's great. So what do you enjoy most about it at this point?
At this point, being strategic, strategy, analyzing competitors and competitors' ads. When you even now, I'm getting into more, technical terms, but
that's okay.
Looking at the auction insights reports for some campaigns or even accounts. Why are our competitors' impression share higher, for the top page, as opposed to having their overall impression share being low, is something that I've noticed especially during COVID and the latter parts of COVID and during the holidays and even some till now, is that I've seen a lot of competitors bid more with ad scheduling. So to viewers who don't know, ad scheduling is when you set your campaign and you have it set to different times during the day. So for example, intervals. So for example, midnight to 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 12 p.m., 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., and 6 p.m. to midnight, and so forth. And so what I've noticed is that these competitors in our automotive vertical tend to bid more during the lunch hours and even the hours after work when there's, higher traffic and more, more potential to get more leads, more conversions. So that's what I've noticed, growing in this strategic field with research has definitely improved my digital marketing experience.
Do you enjoy it? Is it fun?
Yes.
If you could take it to the next level, right? Say, okay, here's what we're doing right now to benefit our clients. What would be some of the things that you'd like to see in terms of growth with our digital capabilities?
Well, right now, besides Google Ads and paid social, basically performing best at each digital medium channel, whether it be paid social, email marketing, Google Ads, and so forth. Analysis, just analyzing, what our competitors are doing in those channels and where we can capitalize.
Do you feel, I know that you've had over the years more continued exposure in terms of communicating with our clients.
Yes.
Has the process of communicating with our clients and developing relationships with them improved your overall knowledge and ability and understanding?
Yes. And I actually like it, being a talker. So that's one of the very important aspects of, I guess, my digital marketing experience here at the Herman Agency, is having developed close relationships with some clients and knowing that they can trust on you.
Are there things that specifically that you can think of that clients have been able to help you learn through the process?
Yes. So one simple example is during COVID, for example, some clients, not even just COVID, the first part of COVID, but let's just say a client's region specifically had a snowstorm hit them. And so he's having communicated with them, seeing that this affects floor traffic. Well, what does that mean for us? That means that we have more people now searching online, which brings into the digital retailing aspect of it. But, there's only so much that we can do to bring in floor traffic, but just knowing what affects it, that's good. Also, having been, in meetings with dealer.com. So dealer.com, the company that manages the website.
Sure.
And actually analyzing the client's website, seeing where users click more, why, where users don't click more, what can we do to improve that?
It's all good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad to hear this from you because, it's such an important part of our business, the digital side. And, I'm always hoping that we continue to grow in that area and become more proficient. I'm also excited about us, applying what we've learned from the retail automotive space back to our own business, right? We've not been very aggressive in marketing our agency, over the last period of time. We're doing this now, and this is one key component to us exposing and showing our agency for who we are, which I think is a collection of very interesting and talented people who all have a passion for what they do. But my desire is also that we take this knowledge and skill set that we've been able to use to help dealers succeed, and look at ourselves and say, okay, what are we going to do to continue to get the message out about us and what our skill set is, and how we can do that? So I'm excited about that as well too. Tell me, how has life changed for you now? Now you're a married man in the last few years, and moving in the direction of, I would think at some point in time, maybe adding to your family.
Yes.
How does it feel now to be a married man, professional in a career? Has that changed your life a lot?
In terms of adding more responsibility, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I like it.
Yeah.
It taught me to be more organized. So it's improved on my organizational skills, basically in my whole life or at home as well. And so taking on more tasks, in the house, but lovingly and willingly, and just having that teamwork, fostering that teamwork and empowering it is just a beautiful aspect of, the married life. And then, of course, when the time comes to, have kids.
I think that, when you get married, because I got married later in my life, as you know, it really, when you have the right partner, which I do, and I assume that you do, it brings out a lot in you as a man, doesn't it? It just, you start to grow and develop in ways that you couldn't possibly have prior to.
Well, yeah, you learn a lot from your partner.
Yeah.
Some things that you might not know. This one, I actually want to connect back to Richie's podcast, if you remember. He had Donna give him those pointers,
yes,
on which t-shirts didn't match.
Right.
And so I actually want to give credit to my wife on that as well. Because she has a keen taste for fashion.
Right. So make sure you go out of the house looking your best, right? It's good. Well, I think all those of us that are married find that to be consistent, that our in most cases our better halves tend to have a good eye for making sure we're heading out looking our best. As you look forward to the future in terms of your life, what are some of the things that you would like to accomplish moving forward? What are milestones for you, personally and professionally?
Passing on this knowledge, this experience that I have fostered and then just developed onto a team or, the agency as well. And I remember, and I've told you this as well, it was 2 years ago, Richie had called me and Darren into his office and asked us both what our 5-year goal would be. And so this was 2 years ago. And then I told him, my end goal would be digital marketing director. And still stands, of course. And so one day, hopefully just, having my small team, giving my knowledge, sharing my strategic knowledge, my experience, and then just helping the team grow with the agency as well.
Interesting. The theme of sharing, right?
Yes.
Goes back to the beginning of talking about being together with family and sharing that time. What is it for you in terms of sharing knowledge that is you value?
It's rewarding.
Right.
It's very rewarding. Just, training and helping somebody develop the potential skills or even their skills at that time. And so it makes me feel good, having this knowledge and just being able to pass on this skill onto others.
Very good. Is there anything that you would like to ask of me?
So I was watching the Brad podcast, and I really want to, I don't know if you have it, but I really want to try that samagon. So what caught my attention is, and my interest is the vanilla nutty flavor.
Right.
I've never tasted any alcoholic beverage that has such features. when I went in 2016, and I want to connect this to your experience as well.
Okay.
To Dagestan and Russia, we would sit down, and I agree with you. We're not alcoholics. A typical Russian is not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But they would have their shot glasses, they would have their bottle of vodka, and it would be like, I don't know if it was every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes. Just
right.
Chut. Yeah. So, and then this is a close relative, but like a far cousin of my dad, and I see him as an uncle as well. He has his own winery, and so he also makes his wine as well. And so seeing the wine culture there as well, and so I'm very curious to see how this tastes.
Okay, well then I will make a note to bring some in and we can try it together. It's wonderful. I mean, it was a real surprise as we tried it for the first time to see the flavor that it had. And I think there's a number of things that I like about it. Number one is that, yes, before I had gone to Russia, of course you think everybody drinks vodka, okay, which they do, right? But in most of the villages, they actually make their own alcohol, in this case called samagon, which any literal English translation would say that it's essentially moonshine, right? Which I've never had in the United States, but when you think of the word moonshine, you're just like, oh my God, it sounds like some really illegal, super strong, powerful beverage that the Dukes of Hazzard used to run around on the TV show. But I find that it's a really nice drink. I mean, it's got a vodka-like quality, but it's something more special and unique about it, and it's different because it's made by so many different people, and they impart all these different flavors. So we actually have at the house, we have some that has plum, like a plum flavor, and then we have this one which has more of like a vanilla flavor. And every time Irvana's mom comes over, or if we go back and forth, there's always some given to us in some very interesting container, right? It's not like in a nice bottle, it's not like something you buy at the store. It's always like they took it out of a jar and then they dumped it into a funnel into like a plastic bottle, and then they wrap it in tape and paper to make sure that it makes the trip okay. But I will certainly bring it in so that you can try some. I think you'll enjoy it.
It kind of reminds me of compote. Compote. That's also they put into jars.
Yes.
You boil, for example, peaches or any fruit.
Yes.
With water, honey, sugar. So.
At Irvana's parents' place, there's always, a couple of big jars of compote, up here, down there, and it's so good. And that's like, I think you'll agree, one of the things that I really enjoy about traveling there and spending time there, and people, it's not about going out to restaurants and stuff like that. I mean, sure, you can do that. But to me, the quality of the food that is prepared almost everywhere you go at home, right, is incredible. The meats and chicken and all that stuff, super fresh. Vegetables right out of the garden. Eggs right from the chicken in the backyard. Everything is so fresh. It's an experience that you can't always recreate here.
Yeah, and that's actually what I wanted to ask you. Having, you yourself been raised in American culture or an American family here, and then, marrying your wife from Russia.
Yes.
How was that, I guess, culture or tradition experience for you?
Wow. Okay, so at first it was the first trip that I took to Russia, which I would say is coming up on, almost 4 years now. It was true. It was the first time I can say that I experienced culture shock. It was very overwhelming. We went for a month. It was my first time to Russia. And for anybody watching or listening, who has not been to Russia, as an American citizen, when you go to Russia and you get off the plane and you're in Russia, in an instant that you are in Russia. It's just, it looks, it feels, it smells, everything about it in a lot of ways is what you would expect. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It just, it feels very Russian. I mean, of course the alphabet's different. Everything is so different. And so what I had a hard time with was just the intensity of the experience. We were staying with her family in an apartment in the city. Her family's very close, and so you're in a lot of contact and communication with the family all day long. And sometimes 3 meals a day, every single day. I was not used to that, right? I'm sort of used to being on my own free schedule and coming and going as I pleased. And so it was working myself into a family rhythm that I wasn't used to. Of course, trying to adapt to the language was a challenge. And so there were moments that I felt overwhelmed, and I'd never felt that traveling anywhere else. However, I can tell you that any feelings of overwhelm that I did feel at the time, they quickly went away. I'd go out for a walk or just, get a little fresh air and just get a little time by myself to readjust. But the thing that I was so struck by on my first trip and every trip there since was the hospitality. The hospitality was unlike anything that I'd ever experienced on a consistent basis. You go to Russia, and like I said, it feels like Russia, it looks like Russia, and out on the street, you don't see a lot of smiles and highs and hey, how you doing? Quite frankly, as an American, you get a lot of looks, you get a lot of glances, because apparently I look different. I mean, now that I've been married to my wife for 3.5 some years, we go places and people automatically think I am Russian at this point in time. But on that first trip, no. And so you're out in the streets, and it feels sort of very cold and off-putting at first. But every time you get behind closed doors, the love and the hospitality and the effort that was put into making a table, putting out whatever was the best food and drinks and whatever they could provide at any time. I'd never experienced that before. And that's the thing that still to this day has the strongest grip on my heart in terms of going back there, is that the hospitality and the love and the joy of those experiences. And it didn't matter if it was in the city, didn't matter if it was in the village, no matter where we went, that was the experience. Now I get it. We're coming over. I'm the American husband, and it's to them it's a big deal. I mean, I went places in the village on the last trip. They'd never seen a person from the United States ever. So even that, people were kind of coming out of their houses and looking at me. I'm serious. But the friendliness and the warmth and the hospitality is really the thing that has stuck with me the most and helped overcome that feeling of culture shock the very first time.
Nice. That's the same experience as well with me. Like when I was in Turkey as well, Turkish hospitality, it does have its own roots as well, but I can never compare the hospitality that I've seen in the villages in Russia, in Dagestan, where my family grew up from my dad's side. The togetherness, the willing to help as well, and like you said, to the same detail, setting out the table, with the best china over there, and even if do you want seconds? Do you want thirds? Oh,
but come on, they don't even ask you. It's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my experience. It was just like, here's more, yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. The sharingness.
Yes.
Basically.
And I think something about that I could have thought, and many people from Western civilization or Western culture would think, is you go to these villages, and I don't think, the average listener to this podcast understands what a village really is, right? And a village, is a small town that's not really a town. It's dirt roads. It's old wooden houses. The indoor plumbing is limited. Most of these villages, the toilet is the outhouse. The shower or bath is the banya. Yeah. There are chickens and roosters and goats walking freely. There are cows walking freely. And to the average American, it would look poverty-stricken in some ways. To American eyes, they might look at this and say, boy, these people look, I don't feel right saying it. So I'll try to think of the best word, but I think the average American would look at a village and not understand the dynamic and what it means. But I'm saying this to get to a point. When you spend time with the people in the village, you realize that they have, my perception, a richness and a wealth and a joy and a happiness that you very rarely come in contact with. I mean, a true sense of happiness and appreciation for what they have and what they're able to offer.
Yes.
You don't get a sense that these are people that are upset or disappointed by their lot in life at all.
Yeah, it brings out the humble side of you.
Yes.
Even.
And I find that incredibly moving. In fact, as we're sitting here talking about it, I'm already in my mind imagining going back and hopefully having new versions of the experiences that I have had, because every one of them was fun.
Yes.
Every one of them was joyful. Every one of them had some drinking and some food and some music and dancing, and the next door neighbor coming over with his bayan and playing what would look like an accordion, like just out of nowhere, and the kids getting together and gathering together and singing songs. It's like it's like out of a fairy tale.
Yeah.
And I value it tremendously, and I'm glad to hear. I know you do too. Because I feel so blessed, as I'm sure you do, to have a multicultural family. And not everybody knows this about me, but I'm grown up in the United States. I was raised a Catholic, even though part of my father's side of the family, if you go way back, was Jewish. At the turn of the century, we were raised in a Christian environment. America, right? My wife is Tatar. She's Muslim. She's from Russia. And this cross combination of experiences that I don't think that we have, I value it as one of our greatest assets. Not only for ourselves and our own personal life's enjoyment, but to be able to pass that on to our children, for our children to experience, the Herman and Scarsdale, which is my mother's maiden name, side of the family and our experiences. St. Patrick's Day is coming up. We will have corned beef and cabbage, and I love that, right? I love that we share that. And I also know that there will be a celebration soon at the end of March, Sabantui, which is one of the Tatar sort of spring festival, spring harvest festivals that many nations have. And we'll enjoy that. And our children will be able to benefit from an experience that is so different. And I excuse me, because I'm just going to go on just 1 second longer about it. You look at the world that we live in, and all the divide between races and cultures and religions and all of this. And I'm so thankful that I'm now able to have this really multicultural experience in my life, because it really makes you realize that, okay, my wife's family is Muslim. They're no more Muslim than my family was Christian. And what I mean by that is that we weren't in church every Sunday, and we were not devout Christians, and most Muslims are the same way, right? We all believe in some sort of higher power. We all have some sort of book or guidance or things that, lead us in a particular direction. But I feel at the end of the day, we're all sort of seeking the same thing, right? A connection with a higher power, a connection with each other. And the more time you spend in multicultural situations, you just realize that there's this beautiful commonality amongst everybody. And I experienced that in the villages in Tatarstan with all Muslim people living in small homes, without houses and banyas, and the joy was incredible.
Lovely. Very beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak a little bit there.
Thank you.
It's your podcast. It is your day today, Omer. Well, how about this? How about we take a natural pause there? Because as I've said with everybody, these are conversations that we will have again on this show. My desire is for each one of you to come back and talk as much as you'd like, and for us to share more about each other and get to know each other a little bit better. But I think now feels like a healthy place to pause. I thank you.
I thank you.
I appreciate your appreciation for these shared experiences.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome, Omer. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good job.